Welcome back, everyone, to the Temple of Technology. I am your host, Scott James Magner, the idiot with a microphone. As you could probably tell by my background and my jazzy sweater, this is going to be another episode of So Here's the Deal, an Arts and Entertainment webcast where we cover curated selections from my extensive media library, talk about what the content means to us, the physical release of the discs that I own, or the content that I own. It could be books, could be comics, could be CDs, records. I have all those things. I have lots of them. But we're going to talk about what those mean to me and my friends, and we're going to go forward. This is another episode of our David Lynch Film Fest, specifically our continuing coverage of Twin Peaks. And tonight, McJulie and I are going to talk about episodes 2 and 3 of the first season. You can see right there my way cool Twin Peaks font, episodes 2 and 3. What we are doing now that we're into regular weekly episodes of Twin Peaks, we're going to be talking about 2-episode blocks. Julie and I will trade off in the summaries, and in our expanded coverage, we're also going to talk about one of the main cast for Twin Peaks. So tonight we're talking about episodes 2 and 3, and let's get to it. All right, our overview for Twin Peaks Season 1 is more or less the same as it was for the pilot. We're currently watching episodes based on last year's Twin Peaks A to Z, or Twin Peaks The Complete Mystery, depending on how much money you spent on the set. The Blu-rays. We are watching episodes 2 and 3, which are Traces to Nowhere and Zen and the Art of Catching a Killer. These episodes aired in April of 1990, and it's really important to note that the pilot episode, which aired also on Thursday, the week before, was the highest rated movie of the year on television. It was insane. The Nielsen rating it had a 22 share. For those who don't know what Nielsen ratings are, 1 point of Nielsen rating equals 931,000 people. Or rather, 931,000 households. So 22 times 931,000, that's many, many, many millions. It was roughly, at the time, 10% of the United States watched Twin Peaks pilot. Episode 2, not as good, but it had a 16.2 share, and it was the best ratings that ABC had for any television show in the previous 4 years. Now, one of the things that really matters about Twin Peaks being on Thursday nights on ABC at 9 p.m. is that at Thursday nights on NBC at 9 p.m. was a little show called Cheers that you may have heard of. Have you ever heard of Cheers, Julie?
The name rings a bell.
Rings a bell. Well, it's a place where everyone knows your name. And
Yeah, The Good Place, right?
The Good Place. We'll talk about The Good Place much later, but I definitely want to talk about The Good Place. The Good Place is as Lynchy as it gets, and it had no David Lynch involved whatsoever. But it did have Ted Danson, who is the star of Cheers. And it turns out that on April 16th, 1990, Ted Danson had the chicken pox, and he was not in that episode of Cheers. And a lot of people tuned into Twin Peaks instead, because Ted Danson was not going to be on Cheers. It's like, oh, well, that Twin Peaks was so great last week. So many people turned in that the ABC executives coined the term called the water cooler effect, where they would have episodes of television that everyone would be talking about the next day at the water cooler, and Twin Peaks was one of them. So these 2 episodes were the first ones to be shot in a warehouse soundstage in San Bernardino. The exterior shots, all the establishing shots, are still being done up in Washington State, but most of them were all recycled from the pilot. And some of, whenever they go and look at trees, they're looking at trees at night. And it turns out that trees at night can be filmed anywhere. And so that's all, not always the awesome, awesome trees that you can see right over here where Julie is. What are those trees, Diane? I gotta find out what the name of these trees are. What are
Honestly, these trees are a graphic image. I don't think they're a photo.
what?
If you look carefully,
Yeah,
but
some of those trees are repeated, but they're wonderful. We'll just
Douglas
talk.
firs.
They're Douglas firs. It's awesome, and
Douglas firs.
that is something that it's the trees are a character of the show, and I'll talk about why they're a character later on in our expanded cover. Episode 3 lost 14% of its audience share because Sam Malone was back on Cheers, but still pretty huge, right? 14% off of 16.2 is still a 15 share. Actually, no, it's a 13 share. But 13 times 931,000, that is a lot of people. That's 15 million people, 50 million households watch this show that third week, and it just kept going and kept going and kept going. And that third week was when the network executives at ABC got pissed because they knew it was a hit. They knew how many people were turning in, and they were really upset that it was being parked on Thursday nights. And they wanted to move to Wednesdays, as they thought that having it on Thursdays instead of Wednesdays was really seriously jeopardizing the show. Much later on, the season, when we get to episode 8 was moved Wednesday night, and that's where season 1 ended up. But it was done at 10 p.m. instead of at 9 p.m. And that was enough to really keep things going. So I am going to read the plot summary for episode 2, Traces of Nowhere, in just one moment. But first, the Log Lady. All right, we're back in the screening room. We're going to watch the Log Lady intro for Twin Peaks Season 1, Episode 2, Traces to Nowhere.
I carry a log. Yes. Is it funny to you? It is not to me. Behind all things are reasons. Reasons can even explain the absurd. Do we have the time to learn the reasons behind the human being's varied behavior? I think not. Some take the time. Are they called detectives? Watch and see what life teaches.
Thanks, Log Lady. That was informative and very cryptic. To build on what the Log Lady said, here is the Wikipedia summary for Traces to Nowhere. Now, you may remember that at the end of the pilot, which is what people saw the week before, they didn't see the big, long, extended international pilot that we watched. They saw the normal 90-minute pilot. Dale Cooper asked Sheriff Truman, is there a place around here where I can get a room? And he said, I can get you a good rate at the Great Northern. And that's where we pick up at the start of Traces to Nowhere. Staying at the Great Northern Hotel, Cooper meets Audrey Horne, the unruly teenage daughter of the hotel's owner, prominent businessman Benjamin Horne. Cooper and Truman interrogate James Hurley, who reveals he knew Laura was a cocaine addict, but that she had been recovering until a relapse in the previous week. In their jail cell, Bobby and Mike discuss money they owed a violent trucker Leo Johnson. After James, Bobby, and Mike are released from custody, James asks his uncle, mechanic Ed Hurley, to seek protection from the Bookhouse Boys. Shelley Johnson, Bobby's secret lover, and Leo's wife, Shelley Johnson, Bobby's secret lover and Leo's wife, is horrified to discover a shirt belonging to Leo covered in blood. Donna reveals to her mother, Eileen Hayward, that she and James had fallen in love while James and Laura were seeing each other. Donna visits Sarah Palmer, to offer condolences, but Sarah has a horrifying vision of a gray-haired man. We know that to be Killer Bob. Angered that her brother's widow, Josie Packard, has control of the family sawmill, Catherine Martell plots with Ben to burn the mill down. Laura's eccentric psychiatrist, Dr. Lawrence Jacoby, listens to secret cassette tapes she sent him, revealing he is the one who unearthed the locket. Remember, the end of the pilot shows somebody wearing gloves, so perfectly androgynous, digging up a coconut, taking out the locket. That was Traces to Nowhere. But wait, there's more. All right, I have to do this. There's more, because we've got another episode. And the log lady is going to tell us all about it, and then Julie will tell us all about it too. Take us away, log lady. All right, log lady, tell us about Twin Peaks episode 3, Zen, or the skill to catch a killer.
Sometimes ideas, like men, jump up and say, hello? They introduce themselves, these ideas, with words. Are they words? These ideas speak so strangely. All that we see in this world is based on someone's ideas. Some ideas are destructive, some are constructive. Some ideas can arrive in the form of a dream. I can say it again. Some ideas arrive in the form of a dream.
Well, that wasn't cryptic. A dream? What could that possibly mean?
What could it mean?
I don't know. Perhaps Wikipedia could tell us.
Let's see. What does Wikipedia have to say about episode 2 or episode 3, depending on how you count it? Zen, or the skill to catch a killer. Ben's brother, Jerry Horne, arrives in Twin Peaks to visit One-Eyed Jack's, a casino and brothel the Horne brothers own across the Canada-United States border. Bobby and Mike discover that Leo, their cocaine dealer, knows Shelley is having an affair. Cooper relates a dream he had years earlier about a Tibetan investigative technique. While reading the names of suspects, he throws a stone at a glass bottle. If the bottle breaks, the suspect is worth investigating. The technique suggests Leo and Jacoby are suspects. Acerbic FBI forensic specialist Albert Rosenfield arrives in Twin Peaks to perform Laura's autopsy. Josie, suspecting Catherine's ill intentions, discovers she has been keeping 2 sets of ledgers. To Sarah's distress, her husband Leland's grieving has become increasingly unhinged. Cooper has a surreal dream about a one-armed man named Mike and a malevolent spirit named Bob who vows to kill again. In the dream, an older Cooper sits in a red room with a dwarf and a woman who resembles Laura. They speak in a jarring, disjointed manner, and Laura whispers something in Cooper's ear. Cooper wakes up, calls Truman, and declares he knows who the killer is.
Wow, that's a lot going on. So here's the deal. Let's move on to our first impressions of these 2 episodes. I'm reminding everyone that Julie and her husband watched these live when they went out in 1990. I watched them 10 years later on home video. And of course, we all watched them this last weekend, but my first impressions are going to be a little different than Julie and Paul's, and that's really important. So let's move on to first impressions. All right. So, Julie, what are your thoughts on episodes 2 and 3?
Well, I think episodes 2 and 3 really, I mean, they don't actually waste any time.
Mhm.
They really move forward on what I think of as the guts of Twin Peaks. And what's funny is rewatching them, I actually didn't remember how quickly we get to certain things like Cooper's dream or Albert showing up or One-Eyed Jacks. Like somehow I misremembered those happening later on in the season, but it's
You
all
know
right
what?
there. And
I'll tell you why,
yeah,
if I may. It's because we've
okay.
seen Fire Walk with Me many, many times. And all of those characters are well represented in Fire Walk with Me. And so the memory is tricking you because it equates Twin Peaks and Fire Walk with Me together. But chronologically, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me happens 2 years after we watched it on television, or rather, you watched it on television. And everything is out of order in crazy, weird time travel Lynchian fashion. So there's, I had the exact same feeling, right? One-Eyed Jacks is just such a huge deal. And I'm trying to keep in my head straight what we know about One-Eyed Jacks and what we know about, what certain characters are doing there and why. But then keeping my impressions straight to what we're actually seeing in these episodes. So I feel it. I feel exactly the same way.
Um, I know from that in the past when I watched these in real time, um, I don't remember if it was a big struggle, but I remember that at some point, and I think it was as soon as episode 3, if not episode 2, we had a group of people who gathered in one of those shared houses. We all gathered in the living room and to watch Twin Peaks. And so I know it really became a party at some point. Um, briefly it seemed like everybody we knew was a big David Lynch fan. Um, and I feel like that water cooler effect took hold very quickly. Like I feel like a lot of time with other shows, sometimes it feels like it takes a while for them to catch on, but with Twin Peaks, it feels like it just boom out of the gate was like the hippest thing going. And I seem to remember, although I could be misremembering this, but I seem to remember that there was a general sense that if you were a hipster, you watched Twin Peaks because Cheers was for old fuddy-duddies. Um, Also, I think maybe Cheers was in, I'm not sure how long it had been on the air at that point, but I feel like
It
it
was
was
on for, this was Cheers' seventh season.
okay.
And so
I
Diane
feel like it
had
was
switched off. Frasier and Rebecca and Lilith were main cast members now, or they were supporting cast members now. And this was all,
yeah.
somebody else had bought the bar, and Sam and Woody Harrelson was on, right? So there's a whole, it had the mid series jump where new people are coming in, which we'll see very strongly in season 2 of Twin Peaks. But that's where the dynamic changed for Cheers, right? And so with a serious challenger like Twin Peaks on ABC, which was that other network, and CBS was where things went to die. But it's very funny because the DVDs that I first got for Twin Peaks were CBS branded because they were reproduced. They were released by the Paramount Corporation, who had picked up the rights when they picked up the rights for a lot of other stuff. But it aired on ABC, and all the intros and outros that are included as extras on the DVD sets are for ABC, talking about a whole bunch of cool stuff. But yeah, it was definitely not the cool network. It was the upstart. It was the not there, and Fox was just starting up, right? It wasn't really a going concern. There were maybe 2 or 3 programs there, plus the news on Fox. It was mainly for sports. They didn't really start doing drama until a couple of years from where we are now, when a little actor named David Duchovny shows up in a uh, show called I forget what it is. I don't know what it was. It'll come to
Let's
me.
see. Um, Attractive young FBI agent
Attractive young FBI agent, yeah.
get who believes some weird things,
He wants
likes
to
to shine
believe
his
things.
flashlight around in the woods of the mysterious woods of the Pacific Northwest. I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Twin Peaks again, isn't
Oh,
it?
it may well have been Twin Peaks for all we know. Yeah. Now I watched this on home video. I was single. I lived in a basement. I had a giant ass TV. This is one of the first things I actually watched on my big Trinitron, which is a 32-inch TV. And I was about as far away from the Trinitron as I am from that camera. And so I had a shitty couch that I think was actually in the apartment when I rented it. I had an entertainment center. I had a 32-inch TV. And I was watching Twin Peaks, and that's what I did. And I realized as I was binging that first season in those discs that I should slow the fuck down and watch one episode at a time. So I stopped binging after episode 3, went back, and started watching it one episode a day. Not a week, but one episode a day, simply to give myself that movement going forward. And I only had like 10 DVDs at a time. One of them was The Matrix, right? So I would watch The Matrix over and over and over again. But watching those episodes one at a time after having binged through them made me want to binge even harder. Just get to the next bit, get to the next bit, all the way through there. And watching 2 episodes here, boy, did I want to watch episodes 4 and 5. I wanted to watch them in the worst possible way. I wanted to get to that next bit. I wanted to see where we were going and who Dale thinks caught the killer, because we know who the killer was. We've seen all the stuff. But in the terms of our narrative here, in the terms of what we know of episodes 2 and 3, we have no fucking clue who killed Laura Palmer, except that he had a dream about some guy who says he did it, and a dream about a one-armed man who says he knows what went on and that there was a convenience store someplace. And we have these cryptic bits of the dream, which if you'd seen the international pilot, which not a lot of Americans had, you go, oh, they just reused that content. But there was all new content to us, sprinkled into episodes 2 and 3, of stuff that we know about Laura Palmer's death and about a possible killer. Possible killer of this guy, Killer Bob, or Bob. And the other guy's name is Mike. So before we move on to expanded coverage, I want to talk about the most important character of all Twin Peaks history. It's the man from another place, about whom we know nothing, absolutely nothing, except that the actor knows how to talk backwards. And that was not something that was originally going to be in there. What they were going to do to film this bit was they were going to overclock it and then change the speed that they were moving stuff through when the man from another place and his cousin, who looks just like Laura Palmer. Don't you think she looks just like Laura Palmer? We're talking. We were going to change the way they did that. He goes, well, I can do this thing, says the man from another place. And David Lynch says, let me see that. And so he starts talking backwards. And David Lynch thinks about it. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. They went to Cheryl Lee and says, can you do this? And she says, no. But then the man from another place taught her how to do it. And luckily, she doesn't have to do it all that much. She's really just in this bit here as the woman, my cousin, who looks just like Laura Palmer. And also cryptic, also weird stuff. And we didn't talk about this in our coverage of the pilot, specifically because it's such an integral part of episode 3, or rather Zen and the Art of the Skill to Catch a Killer. Because he lays it all out. He says everything that matters except for who killed Laura Palmer. And Laura Palmer, or rather the cousin, tells Dale Cooper who killed her. And he wakes up, calls Sheriff Truman, and we'll find out what happens as a result of that conversation in our next episode of There Is a Deal, when we cover episodes 4 and 5. But before we move on to expanded coverage, did you have any other notes about the plot of these episodes and how they hit?
You know, I have couple of notes.
Excellent.
One of them is that I noticed that when you quote David Lynch, you have to do the voice.
I gotta do the voice.
Everyone always does the voice. Like I've watched some of the extra coverage where they talk to they talk to the people who worked with them, they talk to Angelo Badalamenti, and they talk to um
Bruce.
Julie Cruz, and they talk to the actors. Every time they quote David Lynch, they have to do the David Lynch voice. It's like some law of nature.
It's
I
such a distinctive voice. I love it. I love the way he talks. I love because there's passion in every single syllable the man utters. I even I saw him do a lot of his web stuff near the end of his life, right? He was reading the fucking weather. He was reading the weather every day. And there was that same passion was in his voice, talking about the fucking weather, and about, what color to paint the walls where he was, or, smoking cigarettes. It was there. It was there in every single syllable, every word that he uttered. There was this passion. And for me, that's David Lynch. And so, yeah, when I'm talking about things that he said, or paraphrasing things that he said, or even talking about things he might have said, because they were related by other people, I got to do the voice. I got to do the David Lynch voice. And hypothetically speaking, we're going to be seeing David Lynch in Twin Peaks as Special Agent Gordon Cole. And he'll use his own voice. And man, is it there. The reason why I raised my voice to do this is because the character is presented as being stone cold deaf. And he's got a 1950s hearing aid. He's got to turn it up and turn it down whenever people are talking to him. And he's always talking too loud. And there's a wonderful scene. It's one of my favorite scenes of the original series. Specifically, it's his interaction with Majid Amick and Shelley about that she is the only person in the world that he can hear. That's why I do the voice.
I think it's impossible not to, almost.
I
I don't
certainly
know.
hear it every time I read things that he's written. A lot of these Criterion discs have a booklet in them, which is taken from essays that he has written along with other people. And when I'm reading these books, I hear David Lynch's voice in my head. I hear voices in my head all the time, but David Lynch's voice is what I hear when I read David Lynch's work. It's just impossible not to. Much like the Log Lady, right? When I think about Twin Peaks and these episodes, I'm always remembering the Log Lady intros, which weren't a part of what you saw on television. They're a home video adaptation. They were for the VHS tapes and the laser discs, and for the brief run that it had on Bravo Network. But it wasn't something you saw on television on ABC in 1990. It was something that came into the mythos much later, and people have just come to love. I love them. I absolutely love them.
The Log Lady is a truly great character. I think it's episode 2 that has we meet her in the pilot, but she doesn't really say anything.
Yeah.
But in episode 2 or 1, there's a moment
Just
where
say
she
traces to
goes up
nowhere.
to traces to nowhere. She goes up to Cooper and the sheriff and says, my log saw something. And Cooper says, "Oh, really? What?" She says, "Ask it." And he just kind of gives her this baffled look, and then she gets all huffy. Thought so, and then goes away. And I'm pretty sure I died laughing when I saw it new. I died laughing when I watched it again this week. It's just so funny. But another thing that I wanted to talk about with the episode 3, the Zen episode, is having both Cooper's dream and the scene where he throws rocks at a bottle to see what names he should investigate. I feel like, now that everybody's seen Twin Peaks, now that we know about Twin Peaks, the sheer batshit insanity of that is a little bit lost. Like when we were watching it, in real time, there's kind of like a holy shit going on. Like, is this for real? Like, and I think that's part of it is like, is this for real? I can't believe, really? what? Now what? I mean, it just, again, the red room, and the man from another place, and the backward talking, and the chewing gum, and all that. They've been incorporated into our pop culture in a way, but the shock of them when they were new is really hard. You can't overstate it. It just blew people's minds.
Yeah,
Um,
I really wish my dotage now that I had watched these live, that I had listened to the woman I was living with and just watched these fucking episodes in 1990. I was doing other things on Thursday nights, right? But if I'd known how awesome this episodic television was, I would have stayed home to watch it. I would have said, "Got the gaming guys, sorry dudes, I gotta go Twin Peaks." I would have watched it on a tiny television that we had. It was so fucking small, right? And I would have been drawn into the screen. It would have grabbed me like that girl from The Ring and glued my face to it, because watching it on a 32-inch screen was almost too much. Watching it on the screen that I've got right here, where I watched it this time, I was able to do it because I had seen it so many times, and I was able to just focus on the stuff that was going on. I was also watching it really early in the morning, right? Which is kind of similar to watching it late at night, alone with the lights off. But I wish I had seen it that way originally, rather than coming to it much later in life. Also, I wasn't a drunk in 1990, and I certainly was in 2000. It colors a lot of how I experienced Twin Peaks, because I absolutely had a beer in my hand when I was watching these. I can tell you for sure that I did. Episode 2, you brought up the amazing scene in the diner. Damn fine coffee. And then that amazing cherry pie, where he has a bite of the cherry pie, and he calls her over and says, "I need 2 more pieces of this pie." Just off the cuff. I'm going to need more of this pie. And that's where pie and cherry coffee, or as I end up calling it because I have a broken brain, but cherry coffee and pie, as it actually has became a thing that people want every time they go to Roslyn, Washington. And it's not there. They don't have it. So, but Cooper's fascination with coffee and how things work. It's like episode 2 is where there's a fish in the percolator. Right? It's, oh my God, out of nowhere, there's a fish in the percolator. It's like, what the fuck? And they don't drink that, and they both go, hmm? And it's not their first cup of coffee of the day. It's not going to be their last. But they go to the diner. They've got the pie and the coffee. And I'm sure wash the taste of that fish out. And this little tiny bit of Pete's life we're shown. It's that his wife hates him. Absolutely hates him. His wife hates him. We know why his wife hates him, because she's in love with Benjamin Horne. But she hates him, and she wants him to suffer. And we see in episode 3, or rather in Zen and the Art Skill to Catch a Killer, that Pete's not entirely fond of Catherine either. He likes Josie a lot more than he likes Catherine. He certainly likes Josie a lot more than he liked his brother, here departed Andrew, who died in a boating accident. We'll talk more about that in other episodes. We're not going to break the timeline. We're going to take these as they come. But
Well,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, although in my notes I wrote down Catherine is evil, but she's right. You don't put shoes on the bed.
Yeah, you don't. I know. I'm not going to do that on my bed, he says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you get the impression that they've been kind of sniping at each other this way for years.
Years and years. They do not like each other. But a lot of these things, right? I mean, Norma and Ed were high school sweethearts. They were. But they ended up marrying other people. Catherine and Ben clearly knew each other back when. I think Leland and Sarah are the only couple from back then who stayed together. But, who knows why that happened? We'll find out later. Sheriff Truman, he's in love with Josie, which J. Cooper tweaks to immediately. right? You can't hide that shit from Dale Cooper. He knows. He absolutely knows. Just like he knows that James was the one who shot the video, right? Because in a shitty little TV that they were watching at the sheriff's station, he saw a reflection in Laura Palmer's eye of James's motorcycle. And he looked in his brain for who's the only person we know with a motorcycle. And it's the guy we arrested last night. Okay, fantastic. We can ask him all sorts of questions now, mainly about cocaine. And we discover in this that, oh yeah, Leo's dealing cocaine. He's dealing it to Bobby and Mike. And we're trying to figure out why. Why do they need that? Until we see Bobby's home life, which is absolute garbage. And that moment where Major Briggs slaps Bobby down was the only moment that I had any sympathy for Bobby whatsoever. Having been slapped by my own father into a fucking wall, I know how that feels. And the person you trust hits you like that and then tells you that he loves you. Because it doesn't feel great. And you can see why Bobby's a piece of shit. Because Bobby is a piece of shit. But it's because he is an active rebellion against everything in his life. The norms he's supposed to have as a football player. He clearly didn't love his girlfriend because he's in love with Shelley, or at least he says he's in love with Shelley. He's certainly sleeping with Shelley. He's also sleeping with Laura at the time. So who knows what else is going on in Bobby's rich emotional landscape. Mike Nelson, absolute garbage. No redeeming qualities whatsoever. In fact, I don't even know why he's there, other than to have Donna be dating somebody and to have Donna have emotional depth in saying, well, I don't love Mike. I love James. And have Donna's family embrace James as quickly and as fast as they do. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in our expanded coverage of James Hurley. But these episodes, like Julie said at the beginning of our first impressions, they hit the ground running and they do not fucking stop. They just keep going. And part of it is I think they were chasing that footage. But another part of it is that David Lynch wrote episode 2 and directed episode 2. And then he fucked off to go direct Wild at Heart, a movie that he had written, but he was originally just going to produce. And then he ended up having to write a script for it and then direct that script. So episode 3, Mark Frost directed it. Actually, I think somebody else directed it. Let me check real fast to make sure I'm not talking out my ass. Yeah, episode 3 was, in theory, directed by Mark Frost and David Lynch. Because they both get the credit because it came material from the pilot. But next episode, the next 2 episodes, Rest in Pain and The One-Armed Man, are directed and written by people other than David Lynch. And that's when Twin Peaks will really kick in, because he's still a producer on this. But for the rest of season 1, David Lynch is absent. And Mark Frost is running the show and sending videotapes to David Lynch where he is filming Wild at Heart. And it's still technically our David Lynch Film Fest, because you can't say Twin Peaks without saying David Lynch. But it's a big, big change what happens in episodes in Rest in Pain and The One-Armed Man from what we've seen here in Traces of Nowhere, Zen and the Skill to Catch Killer, and Northwest Passage, the pilot. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in our expanded coverage coming up now. So our expanded coverage for Twin Peaks, the series, is going to include character summaries and focus-ons for a few of our characters. And I'm going to start things off with a little bit of text that I came up with today for everyone's favorite bad boy, James Hurley, who, as we determined, isn't really such a bad boy. He's simply misunderstood. So the actor James Marshall, also he's been in a lot of stuff. His first television role was a 1985 episode of Murder, She Wrote as student number 3. Over the years, from 85 to 2025, he's got a couple dozen television credits, Twin Peaks was his first series regular role, and he appeared in 23 of the original series episodes, Fire Walk with Me, and 5 episodes of the revival. Marshall says he based his performance as James Hurley on James Dean, but a little bit more on that in a bit. On the big screen, you will remember him from his role in A Few Good Men as Private Loudon Downey, one of the Marines accused of manslaughter. He's the one with he's the white kid with the shaved head, and the other Marine is not white. See, really the way to tell them apart is how their dialogue worked and what they had to do for that. But he was absolutely amazing as Loudon Downey, and it was 180 degrees from his performance here in Twin Peaks and some other stuff that I've seen. His current projects include a show that came out a couple years ago called The Pact, and a new upcoming sci-fi thriller called 3 Knee Deep. And he is a musician, and we will actually hear more of his music as we continue traveling through Twin Peaks. But I'm going to put a link in the comments to this video about his Last FM music channel for James plus Marshall. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on in here. The character, though, is James Hurley. He is the nephew of Big Ed Hurley. He lives with Big Ed and his wife, Nadine. We saw Nadine's crazy ass in episode 2 and 3, where she is so freakishly strong she broke her rowing machine because she's angry at Ed. And she is the woman who's trying to invent a completely silent curtain runners. Why? Because she's not quite right. James's father abandoned him when he was a baby, and his mother abandoned him a few years later, which is why he lives with Big Ed. She lives a nomadic libertine lifestyle. She's described as drinking beer and sleeping with men every night, which there's nothing wrong with that. To abandon your kid to do it and kind of fuck your kid up, as we see James doesn't have a well-adjusted home life, and his emotional life is not great. Because of James Hurley's ties to his uncle, he's one of the Bookhouse Boys, which is a term we hear for the first time in episode 2 and episode 3. Bookhouse Boys are a clandestine secret society formed in the 1940s who help protect the residents of Twin Peaks from the darkness surrounding the town, end quotes. It's unclear how much of that darkness is the supernatural darkness that we're facing. But other members of Bookhouse Boys include Sheriff Truman, Ed Hurley, and Detective Hawk. They are also, it was made clear in the surrounding metatext for this, is that despite Sheriff Truman's protestations, they know exactly how much cocaine is coming into Twin Peaks, because that's one of the things that the Bookhouse Boys do, is they are in opposition to the Renaults up at One-Eye Jacks, who are the ones bringing the cocaine in. James's relationship with Laura Palmer was a secret to almost everybody, but after her death, he becomes, as we see, romantically involved with her best friend Donna, and later on, he'll develop an attraction to Laura's cousin, Maddie. So Laura has a cousin just like the Man from Another Place has a cousin, and spoilers, she looks just like Laura Palmer. These romances put him in opposition to the girl's boyfriends, the aforementioned pieces of shit, Bobby Briggs and Mike Nelson. Now, David Lynch has said that Dale Cooper, and I'm not doing the voice, watch, I'm not going to do the voice. David Lynch has said that Dale Cooper is the character that says and does the things that Lynch wants to do. But I think James Hurley is the idealized teenage version of David Lynch. James's tragic backstory doesn't stop him from doing the right things whenever possible, even when it lands him in trouble. And I think he's the spiritual successor to Blue Velvet's Jeffrey Beaumont. Marshall says, again, he based his performance on James Dean, but he's not really James Dean so much. He's Montgomery Clift. He is the guy, he's the quiet man. He's the guy who's going to be the sheriff's deputy, maybe someday, or maybe even the sheriff himself. Because he is just going to do the right thing no matter what. I think James is one of my favorite characters in Twin Peaks. My absolute favorite character is Dale Cooper, but that's always going to happen. Everyone loves Dale Cooper. But James, for the limited exposure we've had to him here in Northwest Passage, Traces of Nowhere, and Zen, he is a standout. He is amazing, and he was not that old. He had not been acting all that long, James Marshall, and he got better acting over the years. But he kind of stopped acting in the late in the 2010s because he got really, really sick. He took a drug called Accutane for acne, and it messed up his insides to the point where he had to have a large piece of his colon removed because this drug messed up so many people. In fact, he's one of the people who is continually noted in the lawsuit that went against Accutane. And not only did he win that lawsuit, but then the lawsuit was overturned because the judge on appeals said that if the doctor warned you about the side effects, no matter what the side effects were, and you took the drug anyway, you're fucked. You know, it's an important piece of case law, which comes down to now. And these class action suits that happen against drug manufacturers, because there were 3,000 people that joined this class action suit, and almost all of them won. They all got a bunch of money set aside to them on awards and arbitration, and the judge overruled almost all of it on appeal if they could prove that the doctors who prescribed the Accutane had warned them about possible side effects. Not the severity, but the possible side effects. I mean, if you didn't know you're going to take a drug that's going to destroy your intestines, that's a big deal, and you have to know about that. Or if they said may cause abdominal discomfort, that's a different thing, and that's kind of what they were warned. But over on appeals, that was it. So he stopped acting for a while because of his health crisis and because he was doing these lawsuits. His last real big series was in 2017, and then he started acting again in 2022. He was just doing music in between all of that. So that's me talking about James Marshall and James Hurley. Now, Julie, you have another character in mind.
Yes, I do. The character I want to talk about is Audrey Horne, as played by Cheryl Lee.
Nope.
mm,
Sherilyn
oh,
Fenn.
why did I say Cheryl Lee? Sherilyn Fenn,
Because a lot of people, they're the same name for a lot of people.
because they all have the same name.
Sounds like the same. I'm really glad that you picked Audrey this early in the show because I was going to call dibs for next time out. And since you picked her now, I don't have to. I'm really looking forward to your take on Audrey.
Yay. Oh, special bonus content is when they were promoting Twin Peaks: The Return, Cheryl Lee and Sherilyn Fenn were guests of honor at the Seattle area horror themed convention, Crypticon. And I saw a couple panels with them. And on Sunday morning, when I was waiting in line for a latte, I was behind them.
Excellent.
They're teeny. They're so small. Uh, Actors are very frequently tiny when you meet them in real life.
They're standing on
They're
buses.
just like, yeah.
A lot of times.
But also they seem to be very close friends, and it was very sweet. Like their body language was kind of like taking care of each other in a way. And so so it left me with an enormously positive feeling toward both actresses.
I think
I
that
wanted them to be my friend.
Sherilyn Fenn is one of the most beautiful women in the world. I absolutely do. She is stunning. And I can't not watch her when she's on screen, no matter what she's in, right? I've seen Cheryl Lee in a bunch of things, but she doesn't capture my attention the way that Sherilyn Fenn does, especially as Audrey.
No, Sherilyn Fenn is mesmerizing, and she was kind of a newcomer. She'd been in a few things, but I looked them up, and basically nothing I've seen. Um, uh, but Audrey Horne is supposed to be, according to the Wikipedia article, she's supposed to be an 18-year-old high school student, which makes her really obvious flirting with Dale Cooper a little less creepy than some of the things that happen in the show. But specifically, what I wanted to talk about is how, when we were watching this in real time and did not know where the stories were going to go or all the things that were going to come out, Audrey seemed a lot more, you know, like somebody's future psycho ex-girlfriend. And I was watching it and for that, like, why did we think Audrey was such a psycho? She's clearly just dealing with like a terrible, terrible father and things like that. But when I tried to figure out why she read as so deeply disturbed, I think part of it is David Lynch writes weirdos. He writes weirdos who are beautiful often. When a beautiful man like Dale Cooper is a weirdo, we just, a lot of times we just take it for granted. Like, oh yeah, he's quirky. But I think when a beautiful woman is a weirdo, a lot of the time, our culture sort of causes us to judge her as being malicious, um, in a way that you wouldn't necessarily judge a man in a similar position. So I think that's part of it. I think that's kind of the background. But on the other hand, when we don't know any of the characters very well, Audrey does two kind of shitty things. Um, One, it's really minor.
Hold on a second.
Um, Audrey's in the office of, I'm not sure what her role
You talking
is.
about
Like
the
she's
coffee
like
cup?
the coffee cup. Yes,
She's at the
exactly.
reception desk for Benjamin's receptionist.
Yeah, and so she's talking to the receptionist. And the thing is, as far as we know, the receptionist has never done anything to her. She sticks a pencil in the side of a styrofoam cup and is just kind of playing around with it.
Talk
And then
about
she
dating the episode.
pulls it out, and coffee spills everywhere on the desk, which again is minor, but it's pretty evil. I mean, it's just like this, mean sense of humor. Um, the other thing she does quite memorably, it's even got its own weird little theme song, is she ruins a deal with a bunch of Norwegians who were possibly going to invest in property around there. I think, are they
They're,
possibly going to invest in the Ghostwood? Is that the
what they're doing, the Norwegians are there to buy the land that the sawmill is on and develop it into a country
sawmill?
club.
Okay.
Now, mind you, no one owns the sawmill but Josie. Josie owns the sawmill. But Benjamin Horne is working with Catherine Martell to torpedo that and get them to shut the mill down.
Yeah. So so Audrey kind of goes into the room where they all are and sort of hangs around looking sad until they ask, what is wrong, young, pretty girl? Their Norwegian accents crack me up. And she talks about how her friend Laura was found murdered. And this makes Audrey seem a little psycho in two ways. One is that we have seen no indication that she was friends with Laura. In fact, when everybody finds out that Laura was killed, Audrey basically just seems bored. Like Audrey she doesn't seem moved by Laura's death at all. Um, and also, she is so pleased with herself for freaking out the Norwegians and getting them all to leave. Um, so, it does make Audrey seem like, like kind of a bad person. However, by the Zen episode, we're already starting to get a little bit of backfill on that, and she seems way less evil. For example, by then, we are discovering that her father is a big piece of shit. So, when a father is telling his teenage daughter, I lost you a long time ago, if we assume that the father's a good person, that can reflect poorly on the teenager. But when the father is Benjamin Horne, that actually reflects well on the teenager. I mean, there's a very real way in which, well, he lost her because she's judging him.
Because you're a piece of shit. Yeah.
She's correctly judging your morals to be very bad.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a scene where she's in the diner drinking coffee, and she's talking.
Donna and her
She's
family are
talking to
there eating
Donna.
after church,
Yes,
and then Donna says, "I'm gonna go talk to her."
yes. So Donna goes up and talks to her, and they have a little conversation that seems very honest. Where Donna says something like, "You didn't even like Laura," and Audrey says, "Well, I didn't really, but she took care of my brother, and I love her for that." And that sounds really sincere. We also see that Audrey is drinking coffee because she's got an enormous crush on Dale Cooper. And they sort of giggle together about it. Like they giggle in a very schoolgirlish way about it.
Yeah.
And then Audrey says something about her father and Laura that make it very clear that she suspects her father was sleeping with Laura.
Mm-hmm.
And she she is clearly not comfortable with that aspect of her father. Um, so let's say that Audrey is a fascinating character, played by a mesmerizing actress. And I would also say that she's a character where my perception of her probably changed the most over, the course of watching Twin Peaks and over the years. Because, I I thought she was kind of a mean girl, that she was kind of um like a not as bad as Bobby Briggs, but like, the female equivalent of somebody like that. And she remains kind of a dumb kid in a lot of ways, but she does try to be heroic. She tries to get with Dale Cooper and, do investigations and make good things happen. And so I I think she's a really interesting character, and I don't know. I would have loved to see more of her, really, in retrospect.
Yeah, I think she's not in every episode. Uh,
No.
Now there's a moment in this, right? Audrey was gonna have a spin-off series after Twin Peaks.
Really? I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
And the reason why I bring this up is because the concept for that spin-off speech was what became Mulholland Drive, which is my personal favorite
Oh,
David Lynch movie. Yeah. He abandoned the concept of both the spin-off and the original script for Mulholland Drive when he did Lost Highway, which is yet another reason for me not to like Lost Highway. But because by that time, there was just no getting everybody back together and doing stuff all the way in. It's important to note for Audrey that there is not one, not two, but three Angelo Badalamenti theme songs specifically for her. It's the most of any character. She has the jazzy ones, she's got her investigative stuff, and this Audrey's sad stuff going on in here. And that wonderful scene that you're bringing up between Audrey and her father Benjamin, where she is just in her room being sad because not just for herself, but for her little brother Johnny, who still doesn't understand why Laura can't come. Right? He doesn't understand why Laura's not coming today, and they have to tell him every day, Laura's not coming today. I'm sorry. Laura's not coming today. I'm sorry. Very disabled Johnny is, and it's not working out all the way around. So Audrey is sad that her brother has to go through this. And Benjamin comes in, yells at her to stop listening to her damn music. Basically, needle rips her record player and then confronts her about the Norwegians. And she says, and the way she looks at him, right? If she had a gun, she would have shot him in that exact moment. So that simmering resentment that she had, that I don't like you, you're not a good person, you're probably screwing around with with Laura Palmer, who is Johnny's caregiver, you're an awful person trying to steal the lumber mill, you're awful doing this, you're cheating on my mother, Nooper's place, right? If she'd had a gun in hand, she'd have probably taken it out and shot him in that exact moment. And that rage is always simmering for Audrey, I think. It's one of those moments of spunk, of raw passion that draws Dale Cooper to her. Dale Cooper is not uninterested in Audrey. He is not immune to her charms. He likes her from the moment he sees her. She comes over and sits down, and they talk about coffee and various things, and she introduces herself. Right? Dale Cooper is probably 27, maybe, if that. The FBI hires lawyers and accountants, and so it's unclear which one Dale Cooper is. I'm going to come down with lawyer. But they also hire cops. And I don't think Dale Cooper was a cop. He's a peer investigator. I think he was a lawyer or an accountant before he joined the Bureau. Or maybe, as we posited in our previous episode, Dale Cooper's into some weird shit. And Gordon Cole finds people who have seen some shit, and he brings them into the FBI. Right? So maybe he's not wholly unqualified to be an FBI agent, but he's a really good investigator, and Gordon Cole wanted that. So he is not immune to Audrey's charms, and he is definitely interested. And when we see Audrey in the revival, she is broken. And we don't get to see the interstitial years for her. We just see her shattered. And that broke my heart. It absolutely ruined me. Because I was so happy with Sherilyn Fenn. Sherilyn Fenn is, what the fuck just happened? We'll cover this a lot when we get to the revival, right? Which may be, a million years from now if we go by strict timeline order. But I think since we're doing a character profile right now and mild spoilers are available, I won't tell you why she's shattered. But I will tell you that she's not the same person anymore. She has been broken. And the wonderful, bright, bubbling person who got to laugh with Donna, that person is gone. And so we have to relish the time we have with Audrey Horne in Twin Peaks seasons 1 and 2, and a very, very short amount of time that she's in Fire Walk with Me. For season 2, they were going to explore an actual relationship between them. But Carl McLaughlin says, no, this shouldn't happen. She's a teenager. Turns out that it wasn't Carl McLaughlin's objection. It was Laura Flynn Boyle's objection. Because Carl McLaughlin and Laura Flynn Boyle were dating. And on Hayward. And she didn't want that to happen. She didn't want the Dale Cooper attentions to be going to anybody else all the way through there. Even if Donna Hayward was nowhere on the Dale Cooper target. So this is why they brought in the character of Annie, who's Norma's sister, played by Heather Graham. That's why we have her in season 2, is because those were all lines written for Audrey. And you may note that Annie has a lot of cool stuff to do in season 2. That was all going to be Audrey stuff. So not only are we robbed of Mulholland Drive, we're robbed of her in the revival, but we're robbed of her, half of her arc in season 2. And that makes me sad.
Justice for Audrey!
Justice for Audrey!
Justice for Audrey!
Now, mind you, Sherilyn Fenn's doing just fine. Right? There's no shortage of rules for Sherilyn Fenn, in a way that Cheryl Lee has seen a shortage of rules because she's so indelibly linked with Laura Palmer. Right? There's not a lot of room in the middle between Laura Palmer and other stuff that Cheryl Lee has done. While Sherilyn Fenn is a much more versatile actress and has done a lot more stuff. I don't know. It's just, she's a fantastic character, and I'm really looking forward to spending more time with her as we go through Twin Peaks season 1 and 2. Right. She also got, she was nominated for an Emmy for this. She was one of the Emmy crew that was nominated for Emmys for season 1. They didn't win a lot of them, but this season, was unlike anything ever seen on television. We've talked about the ratings, we've talked about its impact on TV and why you do TV a certain way. These performances of the young actors and the untested actors that David Lynch had found through casting are really a huge part of that. All right. I know I jumped in on your Audrey. I'm sorry. Is there anything you want to talk about
No,
James
no.
or more about Audrey before we move on to our final thoughts?
No, I think some stuff will come out as we talk about it, but
Yeah. Yeah. So, James is also in the revival in a limited fashion. I mentioned he's in 5 episodes, but he also is not the same person by the time we move 25 years into the future. In fact, about the only person who is the same person is Andy, which is hilarious because his hair is turned white, but otherwise it's styled exactly the same. And he looks the same way as Deputy Andy. I don't want to call dibs on Deputy Andy because I don't think there's a lot to really investigate about him that we haven't already talked about in the pilot, right? We talked a lot about who he is and why he is in the pilot. But over time, over that 25 years, things happened to a lot of these characters. And the revival talks about some of it, but pointedly doesn't talk about other things. Lynchian tropes. What did you notice in these, if any?
well, as always, the Lynchian trope of everybody's a weirdo.
Everybody's a weirdo.
The the interesting thing is that the whole Red Room thing wasn't a trope until now, but I would say now it is. So this is the invention of a new Lynchian trope.
Yeah.
Um, I would also say, you know, Twin Peaks in general has that Lynchian trope of being set in this kind of strange cross, this weird liminal space where it could be the 50s, it could be the 80s.
The exact word that I would use to describe it is liminal space.
And I think Audrey is definitely one of those characters who embodies that because her outfits, her hair and makeup styling, and of course Audrey's dance, all very
Yeah.
1950s. Very 1950s. Exactly. You expect some ballet dancing hoodlums to show up any second now.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow.
I would also say when we do the nighttime wood shots, I still think that the like visual Lynch trope of everything's dark and then you have this one light that illuminates, different things. That's very Lynchian. And once again, I would say his sort of ongoing obsession with the intersection of innocence and corruption. And Laura Palmer herself is very much a way of exploring that. She is in clearly in the Lynch pantheon, especially when you get to the return. But you can already see it in this first part of season 1 of Twin Peaks, is the way Laura Palmer herself is kind of like everything dark, everything light. Like, so she's definitely this the struggle for the soul, the struggle for the soul of the town in a way is embodied in Laura Palmer, who was she was a genuine pillar of the community. And she was helping people all throughout the town. She was the best of everything, but she was also into some seriously fucked up shit, addicted to cocaine, and had kind of a mean streak sometimes, which comes out when James when James talks about her, or when she talks about James. I mean, that classic quote, James is sweet, But he's so dumb.
which we know he's not. He's just
No.
quiet. He's thoughtful. Yeah. And I think that might have been the cocaine talking, or, whatever residual weirdness is leaking into her from the other place, because Laura is intrinsically connected to the other place. And we'll talk a lot more about that as we move forward. It's really cool that we have a character who doesn't exist, right? In Laura Palmer. She's dead. She's wrapped in plastic. She's not a part of the show anymore, except that the memories of others are keeping her alive. We won't ever see Laura live until Fire Walk with Me, right? We see someone who looks like Laura. We see several people who look like Laura, but we never see her except for the 2 videos shot by James Hurley, which, by the way, are the reason why Cheryl Lee was cast as a recurring cast member to do flashbacks and Maddie, is because she tested so well in those Super 8 videos that they said, oh yeah, no, we could write her in. We could figure out more for her to do. She was originally cast because she didn't mind being naked. And yeah, no problem. She says, sure, yeah, are you paying me? Not a problem. But because of the way she was dancing around with Donna and, the chemistry that she had with James and other stuff going on, they kept her on as a series regular. And it really is to our benefit to have an invisible character who's still so very present all the way through. We see her in every single episode, her picture anyway. And the impact that she left on everybody, right? Meals on Wheels. In fact, her Meals on Wheels stuff is going to be a major plot point coming up in the next few episodes. But her cocaine use certainly is all the way through. Things that she had to do with Bobby and a bunch of crazy stuff going on. It's a fantastic character. One of the things that we should all think about, but so we're going to go back in time a little bit. Julie just, in our break between segments, talked with me about her final thought, and it's a really important one, and I want to give her as much time as she needs to explore it. So, Julie, your final thought about episodes 2 and 3.
Yes, my final thought is particularly about 3. There's a scene where Leland Palmer, Laura's father, is grieving. He's playing this jaunty recording of, I want to say Transylvania 65000, but it's actually
It's
Pennsylvania 65000.
Which was one of Gina Davis's first film roles, I might add. Transylvania 65000. It's worth a watch.
Yes.
Earth Girls Are Easy is the other one, but
Yes.
those are neither here nor there.
But this goofy 50s show, and 50s song, and he's dancing around and crying, and then he tries to get Laura's mother to dance with him too, like, we've got to dance for Laura. And then he starts crying over her picture and breaks the glass in the frame and gets blood everywhere and smears the blood all over the picture. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself because, we are trying to give impressions as they occurred to us watching for the first time. But I have got to say, his grieving isn't normal even for David Lynch. Like in a David Lynch universe, people are allowed to scream and cry and display excesses of emotion in a way that I think not every director lets people do that. But Leland's grieving is psychotic. And I think it is just, it's almost impossible not to see it as guilt bubbling up. And I think even at the time, it made him look guilty as hell. It really did. Like, it made him look like, even if he hadn't killed Laura, it made him look like he knew a lot more about the situation than he was letting on.
Well, I agree. Uh, in fact, every father except for Dr. Hayward in these episodes is supremely suspect. I don't like any of the adults that are not actively part of the Bookhouse Boys. And even Ed is a bit on the shady side, right? Because he is definitely sneaking around with somebody else's wife. And he's sneaking around his own wife. And he's not being a great dad to James. Because he's not there to bail James out, right? He just waits for James to get out and meets him back at the gas station because he can't leave the gas station. He's trapped there. So that's my final thought, is the Bookhouse Boys, to me, are fascinating. They are not explained other than I gotta need some backup from the Bookhouse Boys. He's talking to Ed. And he goes, "Oh, you got it, son." And I want to know more about the Bookhouse Boys. I do. I've got to know more. And the only people we know that are part of this right now are Ed and James, or even what they're doing and why they're doing it. But that's a giant deal. And the other final thought that I have for this, and I didn't think it would bother me as much as it did to watch to this again, but I guess I have new eyes now that I'm in my 50s, is the amount of domestic abuse in these two episodes is truly sickening. And it is like Leo puts soap in a sock and beats the living shit out of Shelley. Like, she could barely stand. She won't let Bobby in to talk to her or anything. And because she washed his shirt was dirty, and he beat her almost to death with soap in a sock because of that. He's a giant ass, and I hope he dies in a fire. And I don't use that term lightly, but I hope that happens for him. I hope Benjamin Horne gets everything that's coming to him. I think that Leland Palmer's guilt means he should get everything coming to him. And Sarah's grief, right? I would turn the card over, right? Her grief is near catatonia going through all this. And it might be the only honest emotion we see from any adult in this entire run so far, is she could barely function. She's so lost without her daughter. And more so than the Pulaskis, right? Their daughter's still alive, but she's a near vegetable. She can't do anything. And she went through the same trauma Laura did, except for that final bit where she was wrapped in plastic and dumped in the river. Or, you know, the other victims that of the killer Dale is chasing. But it's an emotional honesty that is lacking in almost all the other characters. And I want that. I want that, see that, the people who can cry and scream and do things. I want that for everybody else, to have that exact grief. Josie Packard is an ice queen. Pete is not honest about his own feelings. Catherine Martell is a scheming word that rhymes with itch. And they're all bad people, except for Jerry Horne, who's the happiest person in the entire series. Even Andy isn't as happy as Jerry Horne. Jerry Horne blows into town from Paris, where he's just been for some bizarre reason. And he flew all the way with baguette sandwiches in his luggage. Right? He may not even have clothes in there. He has all these sandwiches, and he goes to his brother and says, "Here, have the sandwich. You got to try this sandwich." And they're in the middle of dinner, right? Everyone is in dinner. Johnny is wearing a huge Indian headdress for some reason, right? It's not even a real one. It's like a Hollywood version of an Indian war chief headdress at the dinner table. And no one is talking at the same time because nobody likes Benjamin Horne. And Jerry just blows right in, gives people sandwiches, says, "Oh, yeah, we got to go." Grabs his brother, and off to the brothel they go. Because that is a man who loves life. And so he's clearly not a Bookhouse boy. But I'd like to know a little bit more about him. And I'm hoping that in the next few episodes we get to see something of Jerry Horne that doesn't make him a co-conspirator for whatever the fuck Benjamin Horne is up to. Because he's clearly in on the Norwegian deal, and he knows that they don't have the land, but they're going to get it somehow. Does he know about Catherine Martell? I don't know, but things are coming. And that'll be in our next episode of So Here's the Deal, or our next episode of the David Lynch Film Festival. There'll probably be other episodes here still in between those, and that covering episodes 4 and 5, which are, the titles again are Rest in Pain and The One-Armed Man. Julie, where can people find you online?
My usual handle in your usual socials is McJulie, MC Julie. Also, gothhouse.org. And my last name is unusual enough that if you Google Julie McGalliard, it's pretty much me. There's not another one out there.
I have a similar thing. My name is Scott James Magner, and those are 3 very common Irish names. And it turns out there are a bunch of Scott James Magners in the world, and now as we go deeper into the 21st century, more of them are showing up online. But I'm number 1, baby. I've published enough things, I've worked on enough projects, and I've certainly got my own YouTube channel, which none of the rest of them do. Suckers!
Suckers!
You can find me here on YouTube, Scott James Magner. I'm the idiot with a microphone. SJ Magner, just about everywhere else, including Blue Sky. I just started a Substack. I've got a Discord server. We'll try to figure this all out. But if you are interested in the David Lynch Film Festival, and if you have a personal experience with the episodes that we're covering or with Twin Peaks, please drop us a line here in the comments on YouTube. We want to hear it. We want to read those things online. We want to share our love of this singular television show with as many people as possible. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel to make sure that you know when we drop another episode of So Here's the Deal. And you know what? Julie and I are both science fiction authors, and there's something that we would like you to do right now. Buy some books. As mentioned, I am a game designer, a science fiction author, and a writer of things. And I own and operate a small press called RS Entertainment. We are a progressive publisher who focus on science fiction authors, independent authors, and the stories that they tell. If you go to rsentertainment.com, you can see a variety of different kind of books. There's fiction, there's science fiction, there's space opera, there's heroic fantasy, there's dark fantasy. There's even some books of horror poetry there. You can get one of my books for free, Homefront, my original science fiction novel that I wrote in 2014. You can also see the trilogy that I turned Homefront into is available there for purchase, but you can also get our books anywhere that books are sold, and libraries. Please get our books from libraries or tell the libraries that you want to read them. But buy books in general. It helps authors like Julie and myself to really keep the lights on and do cool content like this. Again, if you have not done so already, please like and subscribe to our channel. But that's it for our video. We're ending, we're going off. You should have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much for watching.